Continue your presentation, please. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, this is me, Mael Brigde, or Casey, and I'm the founder of the Daughters of the Flame. And this is a lovely park in Vancouver. Here's an overview of what we're going to be doing. Obviously, we've done the first three things. Then I'll talk about why tend Brigid's flame, do my story quickly with a concentration on one particular point, and then a history of Brigidine flame tending from the Christian and neo-pagan interfaith viewpoints. And there'll be a brief reconnecting moment. Then we'll talk about tending Brigid's flame and her flame keepers, and then there'll be a chance for you guys to ask questions or make comments. And finally, one more song and a blessing. All right, stop the share. Oh. On Imbolc 1993, Brigid's flame was rekindled in two distant points of the globe, the authors of each lighting unknown to the other. The most famous by far is that of Solas Brigde in Kildare, lit by the Catholic Brigidine sisters. The other was lit by the Daughters of the Flame in Vancouver, Canada. It burned for a night and a day and then was passed by imagination and prayer to a sister in San Francisco. She tended her candle for 24 hours till the flame leapt to Australia. Within 3 months, the initial cell of 19 women had expanded to 2, and eventually to 3, with members participating from Austin to Athens, from Bosnia to Brazil. The world was hungry for what Brigid had to offer, and her cult was catching fire. I'm going to skip the next slide. It's too agonizing. So, this is a quote from one of the Daughters of Flame who wrote this ages ago, but I still really like it. I can almost see the gleam of candles worldwide, sparkling and jumping from one place to the next, weaving a web of light to the goddess, sending her energies and love throughout the world. What a splendid vision from the universe it must be. May her flame burn ever brightly. And that was Hawthorne. So the reasons for tending are many. It's a connection and a celebration of Brigid and her influence in our lives. It creates a global network of magical prayer with a special emphasis on, on the traditional concerns of Brigid. These include peace and reconciliation, sharing of wealth so that all will flourish rather than protecting a few, guarding the land and the creatures that nourish us and share our lives, being tender with and caring for ourselves and each other. It touches on the need of individuals for a focus and a community through which to develop our personal spiritual practice, to reduce isolation and share information and insight. It's also a self-motivated discipline in terms of tending the flame, but also in terms of whether or not we want to connect with others. A lot of us work more as solitaries, and some like to be with the group. Often the flame and Brigid become an anchor in our lives. We enter the devotion and discover its meaning there. Friendships develop. Daughters have sent each other's candles, rush crosses, Vegemite. People give each other prayer and support in difficult times, and celebrate together as well. There's always a majority who just want to tend a flame and know that other people are tending it after her. It also offers what I think of as ever-forgiving cycles of reflection and beginning again, and compassion with ourselves and others, and healing within the constraints of lives and deaths are among the greatest gifts. We get these recurrent reminders to link to ourselves, to each other, to divinity, to the flame. And it brings us back over and over again. It's so easy to just run off course, but these cycles bring us back gently to remembering what it is we want to contribute to the world. We're often told that we have to do something really big in the world, and nothing we do seems very big at all. And this is a very small thing that we do. We just light a candle and keep it burning for 24 hours. And over time, we start to realize that that one tiny thing has actually added a huge amount to the world. Once a strong connection is made, tending the flame can help devotees come out of unhappy or distracted states. It can help us turn our attention away from what we are anxious about or wishing for or want to have happen for us to what we can generate and what we can connect with. An elder daughter whose daughter had recently died once wrote, "Why do I keep Brigid's flame? Because my belief in the goddess is my true pleasure and comfort at this awful time in my life. It's the still bedrock of what remains of me during this time of grief. Otherwise, I am lost." Tending the flame inspires a vast variety of experiences in individuals. One sister received a visit at the beginning, or rather, I think it was the end of her first shift, where a white pullet that was spangled with black wandered into her yard, where she had a black bantam and a hen and rooster. And she decided this was a gift from the goddess and named her Brigid. An American woman who received her shift the day after the attacks of 9/11 wrote, "In my pain, such joy." An Australian, once dedicated exclusively to the Dark Mother, on welcoming Brigid found a calmness, a stillness that wasn't there before. So my story. I sought a goddess with whom I had a cultural, emotional, and spiritual connection, and I received that and much more. So quickly, 1983 or 4, I embraced Brigid, and I had a growing desire to share my devotion with her to other people, with other people. In 1992, I decided to rekindle her perpetual flame, in a very small way, obviously, and formed the Daughters of the Flame. I initiated myself to Brigid in an icy cold mountain stream on Imbolc 1993, and the same day I lit the first shift candle for the Daughters of the Flame. Over time, I started to doubt some of what I thought I knew about her, and that worried me. In, I think, 1997, I stayed briefly with Sister Mary and Sister Phil at Mael Brigde, and I was blown away by their welcome, by their generosity, and their inclusiveness of me as a pagan. We had frank conversations, and it was lovely. I just fell in love with them. In 2004, I started the blog Brigid's Sparkling Flame to connect people to whatever Brigid-related books or links or whatever I could find. And then in 2011, I was inspired to write more about Brigid, but instead of essays and short fiction and stuff, I wanted to write poetry, because it seemed to me that I could approach every aspect of Brigid, whether she's the saint, whether she's this saint or this goddess or that goddess. There's so many different ways of looking at her, and I could look at all of them in poetry and not have to justify them in any other poem. And so I started writing a lot of poems. And that same year, about 6 months later, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I found that in that crisis and those that have followed, that whenever I immerse myself in Brigid's lore or in the poetry that I've written or someone else has written, I find myself in a place where there's far less fear, where there's inspiration and comfort and wisdom, and it always helps. I started another blog, Stone on the Belly, in 2015 in order to share my and other people's Brigidine poems and prayers. In 2016, I started teaching online classes with Goddess Inc. through the Mystery School of the Goddess to help people learn about and make connections with Brigid. And once again, I was blown away and continue to be blown away by the just by the courage and inventiveness and honesty of the participants. So it's been a real joy. Over time, I became comfortable with opposing truths about Brigid. Sometimes I felt close to and inspired by her, and sometimes not. And I realized that for me, believing and certainty aren't possible, or at least not always, and they're not necessary. So I relate to her. I have a relationship with her. I lean on her for inspiration and encouragement. And I draw on the strength that I have from my fellow devotees and the service that I do and the writing that I do. So instead of waiting for her to come to me, I've learned just to go to her. So the thing I wanted to focus on a little was my changing beliefs. Because they did kind of trigger a crisis of faith at a certain point. So when I began, I should say, these are my conclusions, and I totally get that you have the right and in fact the need to reach your own conclusions. So when I began the Daughters of the Flame, I believed that Saint Brigid was a Christianized version of the goddess Brigid, and that the practice of tending her flame in Kildare reached back to pre-Christian times. This was exactly what I wanted, a direct ancestral link to a goddess and a clear devotion to her. Some actual details I could hang my own practice on. I also looked on Christians. A lot of Christians had the view and have the view that she had nothing to do with the goddess, and I looked on that as anti-pagan propaganda, and it made me mad. You notice I'm just throwing things way back and forth because I've got too much stuff on the desk here. So in 1996, Miranda Green wrote that our belief that Brigid was a fire goddess might be based on the saints' association with the fire. That fire is a common association among Christian saints, which symbolizes their close connection to God. So that was, I think, the first chink in the wall, and it worried me. And I slowly started realizing that a lot of what I had been told were aspects of the goddess were directly taken from the saints' cult and just assumed to have come from pagan times, but without any real evidence to support that assumption. I started to suspect that Saint Brigid really had been a devoted Christian. First of all, I decided, yes, she really did exist. I decided that. But I also decided that she really was a devoted Christian. It's just started to feel right. And not only was she a devoted Christian, but that she was strongly invested in spreading Christianity around Ireland. She was going around making communities for monks and nuns. And if this was true, then even if some of the goddesses' associations had attached to her, they couldn't be the same being. So, and also I couldn't assume that Saint Brigid's attributes and traditions also belong to the goddess. So I want to say that I treasure modern manifestations of Brigid's cult just as much as I do the historical ones. I just like to know which is which. I think Morgan said this earlier, that when we can't retrace a writer's steps and weigh their conclusions, then assertions that are born as guesses or poetic imaginings end up working their way into the literature as accepted fact. And it bothered me that I could seldom find out what these claims were actually based on. So originally, these ideas did trigger a crisis of faith. If what I'd been told was wrong, if the practice was Christian in origin, and so much of what I valued about Brigid actually belonged to the saint and not to a deity, then how should I view Brigid? And how should I relate to her as a neo-pagan? I was devoted to her. I'd spent much of my life in her service and building a community around her. So were we wrong? Did I have to change something? Obviously, I didn't want to give her up. I need a sip of water. Over time, I just stopped worrying. I no longer believed that the saint and the goddesses shared a continuous line of tradition, and I accepted that the saints' associations, from the perpetual flame to the snowdrop, which apparently came to the British Isles during the Crusades, belonged to her alone. If one day there's compelling evidence to the contrary, like if they do an archaeological dig at Kildare, I will happily receive that news. But it just doesn't seem like a problem anymore. I don't know why it did before. I think it's because I came from that one true way mentality. But I continually find wisdom in all sides of Brigid. And although I understand the Brigids as separate beings, they're so connected in my heart. I don't try to push them apart. So I render to the saint what is the saint's, and to the goddess what is the goddess's. It's made me pay close attention to where each idea comes from. And when I offer a prayer for somebody these days, I might say something like, "May Brig of the judgments bring you justice," or "May Saint Brigid listen to the sorrows of your heart and give you good counsel." I mean, I might not, but I might. So if flame keeping came from the saint's tradition, it belongs to the goddesses now too. I honor and love Brigid, the goddess of poets. I honor and love Brigit, the goddess of smiths. I honor and love Brigit, the goddess of healers. And I honor and love Brigit, the saint. When I say, "Brigid, I ask for your protection," I'm addressing them all. Yet in another way, I'm speaking to one beloved being. Uh-oh, another slide. Share screen. And there we go. All right. So this is for the history of flame keeping. That is St. Brigid, and that's Conleth, her bishop. I wish I knew what church this came from. If anybody knows, maybe you can put it in the chat or something. Unshare this. Oh, did you see that? Hello?
I don't think we saw it.
Oh, okay. I clicked share screen, but I'll do it again.
There we go.
Yep, there. There they are. Aren't they lovely?
Are those the stained glass windows from our dog? I've seen those windows.
Arda? I don't know. That's a good place to start looking. It's not St. Patrick, it's Conleth.
Mm-hmm.
Or so I'm told. All right. So, in a nutshell, Saint Brigid lived circa 451 to 525 CE and was canonized in the 11th century. She founded a double monastery at Kildare and other religious communities around Ireland in the 5th century, which was pretty early on in the history of Christianity in Ireland. She is a patron saint, not the patron saint, of dairy workers and scholars and the Irish. It's commonly believed that Saint Brigid tended a perpetual flame with her sisters, a holdover of pagan practice, and may have been a druid dedicated to the goddess Brigid, possibly one who converted to Christianity. These ideas originated in academic sources in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. If you've read any of the lives of Saint Brigid, though, you'll notice that there's no flame keeping mentioned there. The earliest life, which came out in around, well, no later than 650 CE, written probably by Cogitosus, a monk of Kildare, describes the city of Kildare, and it describes St. Brigid's church in detail, but there's no mention of fire tending. And there's no mention of a perpetual flame in any lives, hymns, prayers, annals, or texts of any kind until the late 12th century, about 660 years after Brigid died. So the first mention of a perpetual flame was 1185 by Gerald of Wales, shortly after the Norman invasion of Ireland. He wrote that since St. Brigid's day, a fire had been constantly tended at Kildare by nuns and holy women, with no accumulation of ashes, and that since her death, on the 20th day, it had been left to her care and not gone out. He tells us that the fire is surrounded by a circular hedge which no man can enter without facing divine wrath, And he later gives two examples of men who attempted to enter and ended up going mad. Sean O'Doon wrote, "It's difficult to know if Giraldus Cambrensis was influenced by the classics when describing St. Brigid's perpetual fire, but it is strange that he mentions the number 20 as the number of nuns, the same number from which the Vestal Virgins of ancient Rome were chosen. In Ireland, one would expect the number 9 to predominate." There were 7 other perpetual flames known in Ireland at that same time, the same time that Gerald of Wales was writing, so in the 12th and 13th century. And all of them, except the one at Kildare, were tended by monks. Ritual and household fires were lit from these perpetual flames. And if a household's flame was accidentally extinguished, it would be relit from the fire at the church. Of the hearthstone at Inishmurray, W.G. Woodmartin wrote that fire was always kept burning by the monks for the use of the islanders. In later times, when monks no longer inhabited the cashel, whenever a householder wanted kindling for the family fire, a sod of turf or a piece of wood deposited on this holy hearth ignited spontaneously. In response to Cambrensis's claim that men were cursed if they went near St. Brigid's fire, Aaron Laurie points out that the male-tended perpetual flame at Inishmurray also destroyed those who would desecrate it, even after the flame itself had been extinguished and only the hearthstone was left. Fire is very important in Christian iconography. It represents both the Holy Spirit and light. Jesus describes his followers as the light of the world. God is a consuming fire. So it's not surprising that St. Brigid's fire associations have equivalents in the lives of male Irish saints. I just want to read a couple of lines from Thanksgiving After Communion, a prayer that was collected in Ireland by Douglas Hyde. "Lord, who enterest my members, like the embers thou dost shine. Take my soul from out my bosom, cleanse from stain, and make it thine." So on the other hand, there is no direct reference to flame tending in any of the goddess materials, although fire is certainly involved in healing, smithcraft, and poetry, as Ken McCon points out. We're not really on last name basis. So the evidence to me suggests that all of these perpetual fires represent a Christian practice and one that began hundreds of years after St. Brigid lived, that Miranda Green was correct. Brigidine monasteries continued in Ireland for 1,000 years, until the Reformation in the 16th century. The abbesses of Kildare were unusually powerful, heirs to St. Brigid's miraculous anointing as a bishop rather than as a nun by Bishop Mael. In 1131, the King of Leinster, Diarmaid MacMurcha, ordered a violent raid on the monastery in Kildare. Over 100 townspeople died. The abbot's house and part of the church were burned, and the abbess Macphailin was taken away and raped by one of his soldiers, apparently to destroy her sanctity and render her unfit to head the monastery. He installed a kinswoman of his own in her place, and from that time on, the power of the abbesses at Kildare diminished. Uh-oh, lost my place. Oh, yes. I just wanted to mention, it's a side note, it wasn't because of this, but several years later when he did another really crappy thing, MacMurcha was driven from Ireland, and he then turned around and invited the Normans to Ireland to help him regain his power. So altogether, he was not a very nice guy. So Kildare's perpetual fire was tended for centuries. It was extinguished in 1221. Don't know when it was lit, but it was extinguished in 1220, rather, by the order of Henri de Long, the Archbishop of Dublin. And it was later renewed and continued to be tended until around 1540, when it was once again snuffed out by order of Archbishop George Browne of Dublin, as part of King Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. In time, the Sisterhood of St. Brigid died out, to be revived at the invitation of Bishop Daniel Delaney, Bishop of Kildare, in 1807. Brigidines then spread from Ireland to Wales, England, the US, Mexico, New Zealand, Australia, Kenya, and Papua New Guinea. It's believed that the site of St. Brigid's Cathedral in Kildare, the one which belongs to the Church of Ireland, was the original location of St. Brigid's 5th century Kildara, a gathering supposedly of thatched buildings, which as far as we know have left no trace. This was followed by a stone structure with a defensive wall, which, having endured at least 16 raids between 835 and 998, eventually fell into ruin. It was restored around 1230, fell into ruin again, was rebuilt in the late 19th century when they restored the foundation of the fire temple and the round tower, which was built as a bell tower. I always thought they were built as safety from Vikings, but apparently not. Anyway, and finally it was totally restored in 1996. So now I'm going to skip the next slide. Okay, in 1992, I want to talk about Solus Brigde now, briefly. In 1992, Sisters Mary Minahan and Phyllis Shea were, in Sister Mary's words, asked to come to Kildare and to explore our Celtic heritage, to reclaim Brigid of Kildare in a new way for a new millennium. They called their house Solus Brigde, Brigid's Light, and on Imbolc 1993, Brigid's flame was rekindled by Sister Mary Teresa Cullen, then leader of the Brigidine Sisters, at the opening of a conference, Brigid, Prophetess, Earthwoman, Peacemaker, organized by Action from Ireland, a justice, peace, and human rights group. The sisters welcome pilgrims, host a yearly festival at Imbolc with AFRI and their outreach community, Carja Vrija, the Friends of Brigid, promote peace, justice, and reconciliation and environmental protection. People of many backgrounds look to them and to St. Brigid for inspiration. In 1999, Sister Mary said that there are over 1,000 women across Scandinavia who modeled their lives on the values of Brigid of Kildare. They are married and single women who belong to the Lutheran tradition. The Solus Brigde Center and Hermitages, which houses pilgrims and hosts events, opened on 30 January 2015. Their website says, Solus Brigde is a Christian spirituality center which welcomes people of all faiths and no faith. The vision of the center is to unfold the legacy of St. Brigid and its relevance for our time. Okay, I'm going to try to do one more slide here. Ding, ding, ding. There she is. This is the Goddess Brigid, painted by Maggie Jones, an English artist. So the neo-pagan and interfaith story of flamekeeping, I can only tell from my perspective, and I would love to know more about it. So if people have more information about the early days especially, but of different groups that have come up over the years, I'd love to know about it. Email me. So, as the Brigidine sisters were preparing to rekindle Brigid's flame, as you may have guessed by now, I was making similar plans in Vancouver, Canada. In the 1970s and 80s, women were combing history for goddesses with whom they could transform a male-centered Western spirituality into something more empowering for women. And one of the figures to come out of the shadows was St. Brigid, and with her, the triple goddess Brigid. I was one of very many who were exploring this renewed goddess spirituality. Raised a devout Catholic, I had rejected my faith as a teenager because of the church's stand on abortion. I was attracted to Inanna and Isis and other goddesses, but I really wanted a goddess that my own ancestors might have known. So I learned of Brigid in Barbara Walker's The Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets in the early 80s. Excuse me. I felt an immediate and joyful connection to her and quickly began learning everything I could about her, honoring her at my altar, and searching for her in my world. It was extremely difficult to get information about her. At my library, I found a few words in Lady Gregory's book on the saints. There was one whole book, I showed you it earlier, St. Brigid of Ireland by Alice Tretaine, which I still think is one of the best books about her. But there were no churches in Vancouver, no holy cards, no medals, no art. I couldn't get anything. Of course, this was pre-internet. Around that time, I met Erin Laurie, who later became one of the first Daughters of the Flame. There are a couple of first Daughters of the Flame at this conference today. In time, Erin put me in touch with Farron Nafir, who was publishing a newsletter about Brigid called the Triple Flame. And through Farron, I met Meredith, South Carolina, who ran Imbolc gatherings for the Assembly of Brigid in South Carolina, and she's still a member of the Daughters. Connecting with people for whom Brigid was as important as she was for me was just amazing. So in 1985, I went to Australia, where for the first time I saw schools and churches with her name on them. And I stood at the feet of statues of St. Brigid and lit votive candles under them. And all of this just fanned my desire for her and to foster her cult as a goddess. So in 1992, I decided to bring the practice of flame tending back into the world in a small way, and I launched the Daughters of the Flame. In order to do that, I had to make a few decisions. So since I didn't know very much about her, the first decision I made was to keep it women and to keep it 19 in the cell with the 20th shift for Brigid. And the first cell, not surprisingly, is Kildara. And then our name, the Daughters of the Flame. In 1992, I got from Merlin Stone's Ancient Mirrors of Womanhood, a term which I have never heard said, and I'm not sure how to pronounce, but I'll show it to you in a moment. And according to the author, it was translated Daughters of the Flame. I was thrilled to get such a precise detail that the original group was called this thing. So I took the Irish name and I gave it to our newsletter, and took the English name and gave it to our group so that we could actually say it without being cruel to Irish people. But after a while, Erin started to question the origins of the name, which is found in Stone's assertion that, now I'm going to have to share the, share the screen. Share screen, share screen. All right, third line. This very fire was tended by the Daughters of the Flame, the 9 who are those who lived up inside the fence of Brigid's shrine and could be looked upon by no man. So I just want to point out that it wasn't the women who couldn't be looked upon by any man, but the fire, according to Cambrensis. So I searched for a source for the name, and I could not find a reference to it anywhere except in neo-pagan writings, and I started to think they must have gotten it from Merlin Stone too. So I changed the name of the newsletter, but not the group, because we were the Daughters of the Flame. But where did it come from? I wrote to Ms. Stone, and she couldn't remember where she'd gotten it. So that was kind of just the end of it. And I stopped looking. And for 25 years, I've wanted to know where that came from. So if anyone has any idea, I would love to know. Love to know. Third thing I decided, there would be no, excuse me. Apparently it's time for me to take my afternoon pills. Okay. There'd be no prescribed style or liturgy. Each woman, or in another group, each man, would choose their own prayer and their own ritual, because I wanted people to be able to relate not to my idea of Brigid, but to find what their own relationship was. So we are open to women of any religious or political perspective as long as they're good to each other. We've had Wiccans, shamans, Christians, Christo-pagans, Celtic Reconstructionists, Buddhists, and others. I still believe that we need not and cannot all understand and celebrate Brigid in the same way, and that our diversity is one of our strengths. Last decision was to stay small. So I limited it to 3 cells because really, with 3 cells, I have some hope of actually being able to remember and have a personal connection with each of the people in the group. And that's important to me. I don't want to be a secretary for, you know, a faceless mass of people that I don't know. I mean, it would be a service, but it wouldn't be one that I enjoyed as much. I want to be able to connect personally with these people. So that's what we do. Several of the first daughters had never heard of Brigid before, but they were attracted by her story, or the practice of flame tending, and the cycle of prayer it offered. Others were committed neo-pagans. One was a Christian, one a writer who led goddess healing retreats for women. And through letters and our yearly newsletter, we started getting to know each other. When the internet became available, we connected a lot more. We had discussion groups, and now we've got Facebook, and conversation became easier, and friendships developed between members, some very close friendships. And we shared our thoughts about and experiences with Brigid, and together, I think all our practice deepened. I think we've all tried to manifest in ourselves the best of what we perceive in Brigid and to nurture her presence in the world. And we haven't always been elegant. Occasionally misunderstandings have occurred, but we've always muddled through, or at least most of us have. Each daughter has contributed to Brigid's flame. Poets, activists, grandmothers, students, artisans, able-bodied and physically challenged, Black, white, Hispanic, First Nations, old and very young, and everything in between. Those who joined in discussions or took on tasks, and those who focused solely on the flame. Those with knowledge of Brigid and her culture who helped clarify our understanding. Those who portrayed her and her flame tenders in word, music, and image. Those who organized our prayer helpline, virtual healing circles, and shared profound reflections on their spiritual lives. In 1997, Kim Diane joined us, already with an idea of launching her own flame tending group, which in time she did, the internet-based Ord Brigde. You may have heard of them. At some point, we received a candle lit from the flame at Solis Regia, which was another wonderful connection, and started passing that on to members mingled with our own initial flame. So we send out a little wick. At another point, I can't remember when, we learned that our flame devotion had begun on the same day as the Brigidine sisters in Kildare, which to this day still amazes and cools me. So, in 1993, both Christians and neo-pagans entered into the practice of tending Brigid's flame. Many neo-pagans have devoted themselves to Brigid, tending her flame as solitaries or forming flame-tending groups, some broadening the scope to include men, such as Ord Brigde, some representing particular paths, such as the Celtic Reconstructionist Brigid's Irregulars and the Scottish-oriented Nianan Brigde. Neo-pagans have taken to Brigid in a huge way, depicting her in art, honoring her in ritual, writing books about her. She's one of the most popular goddesses of our day. And the Brigidine sisters are well acquainted with their neo-pagan counterparts. We visit them, write to them, ask permission to use their songs and art, or at least we should ask permission, celebrate Brigid together at their festivals. Their open-heartedness toward neo-pagans is one of their gifts to the world, one which as a community neo-pagans seem largely to reciprocate. And this gives me hope that the rift between Christians and pagans can one day heal. Brigid truly is a threshold being, one who crosses vast divides. All right. want to just slow us down for a second here. And share my slide. Uh-oh, where'd the share thing go? Mommy?
You just pull your mouse to the bottom of your screen.
I got it.
Pop up a toolbox. Good.
Okay. All right. All right, here we go. So that's a lot of information. Let's take a moment and return to our breath, our bodies, and Brigid. Are you still comfortable? If not, shift position. Take a sip of water. Notice any tension in your body or mind, and let your breath move to those areas and loosen them. You may wish to close your eyes. Return to Brigit's hearth. Does it need tending? Do what needs to be done to maintain a steady, warm fire and rest in its radiance. Sense the presence of Brigid in and around you. Be aware of the many who, like you, love and honor her. Know that however different we are in approach and opinion, we share this bond. Return to Brigid's well. Does it need tending? Do what needs to be done for the well and its surroundings. Sense her presence permeating the air, permeating the waters coming from the earth, permeating your being. Rest in her. If there are words you want to speak to her, say them now. And if she speaks in return, hear her. Before leaving her well, make her an offering, something which has meaning for you. If you intend to come again, tell her that. Come back into your room, back to the conference. Open your eyes. Oh my God. Sorry. So, tending Brigid's flame. How do we come to know Brigid? Well, a couple of ways. Studying her history and traditions. Read widely, stuff by Christians, pagans, scholars. Be skeptical. Don't accept unfounded assertions, but allow yourself to be inspired. And remember, even when writers give you sources so you can trace their thinkings and check their facts, everybody makes guesses. And there's a lot of disagreement. You don't have to be certain about anything, just be open to possibilities. Though not entirely sensitively written, in the first chapter of her book, Women in a Celtic Church, Christina Harrington really clearly explains the changing trends in Celtic studies and how we came to some of our common misunderstandings about Irish paganism and early Irish Christianity, including Saint Brigid and her relationship to the goddess. It's also an excellent resource on women's role in the early Irish church. So if you want to know more about what Saint Brigid's life might have been like, It's a good place to go. There are two streams, the traditions and persons of the saint and the traditions and persons of the goddess. Who do you most relate to and how? Are you comfortable blending the two streams together? Are you more comfortable choosing one over the other? Or are you happy to honor both the goddesses and the saint in their own right? Build on what you learn. Develop a personal relationship with Brigid. Ask yourself, what are the appropriate ways for you to connect with her and nourish your relationship? It doesn't have to include flame tending. Well tending, prayer, journal writing, ritual, offerings, listening for what she wants of you, inviting her guidance in healing, smithcraft, legal work, hospitality, all of these things and so many more build connection. How specifically to tend Brigid's fire? Well, you can tend the flame on your own rhythm, or you can tend it in 20-day cycles. So you may do it once a week, as one woman I know does, or you may do it every day, as another woman I know does, or you may want to do the regular 20-day shift. You can tend as a solo, you can tend with a group. And in choosing a group, you want to really ask yourself what it is you want in a group, and ask questions of the groups around before you sign up for a shift. You also might want to start your own group. With strangers, with friends, there are a lot of possibilities. You have to remember to keep the flames safe. I leave my unwatched flames in a glass, here it is, a glass cylinder that I put inside a deep enamel sink, and even if it falls over, nothing's going to burn. Other people don't feel safe doing that, and so they extinguish the flame and wear a pendant or have a little faux altar, a little fake flame altar, or an electric candle. There's all sorts of things you can do, but definitely tending the flame is a good idea, not just letting it burn the house down. Is there any reason not to use the saints' traditions in honoring the goddesses? I don't think there is. I think you can do whatever you want. I just like to know where everything comes from as best I can, and to communicate that to the people I talk to about her. How each individual approaches their shift is fluid and personal. You can quickly light your candle and run, or you can carry a symbol around with you so that you keep remembering, or you may take that day and have that be for your creative work, your political work, your whatever. Have it be a dedicated day for Brigid. I've mentioned the cycle of recommitment before, and there are many cycles within the shift itself. We'll forget that we're tending, and then we'll remember. So there are opportunities to come back to it again and again. Every 20 days, you receive the flame from the person on the shift before you, and you give it to the next person, so that even though you are moving in and out of the ritual, it never ends. And then yearly, every Samhain, the Daughters of the Flame decide again whether each one of us, whether we want to continue tending the flame for another year or to give it up. And we make a conscious decision and say it to ourselves and say it to another person instead of just letting it slip away. And this is a really important spiritual practice. Samhain is the cattle harvest festival, where what can't survive is sacrificed and what must survive is nourished. So it's a time when difficult decisions can be made and the other world is encountered in a meaningful way. In flame tending groups, there are glimmers of soul friendship, asking for and offering prayers and encouragement, even when it's difficult to ask or offer, taking responsibility for our feelings and not attacking each other, sharing shifts when help is needed. All these things can bring changes in awareness in how we see ourselves and practice together and approach the world. As we grow in connection to Brigid, we may be inspired to take up supporting others on the path by sharing our devotions, by teaching, working as healers, advocating for women, all sorts of ways we can bring our devotion into the world. But at the same time, people who've already been doing that work, sometimes for many years, will find Brigid and find enormous support for what they're already doing in her devotion. Tending Brigid, I'm so sorry, there's so many words and I'll get through it. We'll survive this. Tending Brigid's flame keepers is another thing that I can best describe through my own experience. My own devotion involves tending the flame, but also tending the daughters by keeping the group functioning, keeping the peace, which is rarely needed, but sometimes, encouraging communications and supporting individual members where I can. And I use the yearly check-in to make contact with people who've been out of touch. I also approach writing as a devotion and service. Reviews, essays, poetry, blogs, and courses. Offering blogs and courses has strengthened both my study and my practice by helping me look closely and connect on a deeper level with Brigid, with the Daughters of the Flame and other Brigidines and the larger polytheist community. And I'm repeatedly moved by people's courage and wisdom and inventiveness. My poems began as an offering to Brigid and a healing for me, but I now see them also as an offering to others. So I share them in many ways now. One of the most poignant for me is there's one that I've sung at a couple of funerals, and that's been a really important sharing. I'm also collecting a lot of the poems in a book. So such experiences with Brigid and writing have led me to want to reach out to others who write already or want to write. So I'm launching an online course called Journeying with Brigid, Goddess of Poetry, and that starts next Wednesday. I seldom need to keep the peace in the Daughters of the Flame, but it has happened, sometimes quite painfully. And I've had to work to meet the challenge in a way that's in keeping with my view of Brigidine practice. This means being peaceful, not allowing myself to respond in anger, and finding ways to offer compassion even when I'm hurt or frightened, by setting clear boundaries and gently defending them, and being willing to reflect on my own actions and apologize if it's needed. I am aware that Brigid is not always gentle in her idea of keeping the peace, but I'm not a goddess or a saint, and I don't trust myself with that kind of power. So for me, hanging on to my integrity and compassion makes the most sense. The yearly check-in is a big job, requiring repeated attempts to reach some individuals. I've never felt okay about just dropping people who don't respond right away. I know how difficult it is to manage everything that's important to us, and I want to assist daughters in making space for their spiritual practice. So the extra effort that I make can make a difference to somebody who's struggling or feeling lost. It strengthens our sense of each other and deepens our work. I sometimes wish people would just respond. I'm as busy and distracted as anybody, but it's actually really rewarding to do, and I'm grateful for the contacts that I've made with people who were hard to get a hold of over the years. When I reach a missing daughter, I often hear, I keep forgetting, I'm letting everyone down, I'm giving up my shift. I ask if she's no longer interested or if there's something in the way. I reassure her that she's not letting us down, that I forget too, and ask if it would be useful to renew her vow, to breathe fresh life into her practice, or if it's time to let it go. This gives people a chance to be sure and to do what they really want and to know they're okay. Forgetting to light the flame is a reflection of inner processes, and examining the reasons for it can help us focus our spirituality just as well as remembering to light it and dedicating the day to ritual and prayer. If the flame is lit on the day of a daughter's shift, she's added something to the world, whether she feels the result or not. But if it isn't lit, it's still a cause for rejoicing. She's made the intention, and sooner or later, she's seen that she strayed from it. She can use this awareness to explore her connection again, see where she needs nourishment, where she might want a hand or need to do something differently, or just needs to sit with how things are until they change. If she can learn to go lightly on herself, then even on the days when she forgets to light the flame, she's added something of significance to the world. Sometimes it's not forgetfulness, but a lack of motivation that stops the daughter from keeping her shift. Again, it's helpful to look at what's happening that causes this. One daughter waited to tend the flame until she felt inspired to. So guilt set in, and she started thinking she should let her shift go. But finally, she concluded it was a duty, that it was a commitment she'd made, and that how inspired she felt didn't matter. So when she realized that, she took up her shifts again, and her inspiration returned. I've learned that many of the struggles I've had in the practice are shared by others, and if I know what's happening for them, I can sometimes contribute reflections from my own life and the mercy I've learned to extend toward myself that will be useful to them as well. So I just want to read a poem now. I don't know why, it just sprang into my head that I wanted to read you guys this poem. Blessing against oppression and submission. You who ran unconstrained across the Curragh, stand between me and slavery. As you shattered the lies of the shrewd would-be rapist, would-be owner of his intended thrall, freed his victim, now sovereign again over spirit, body, heart. Bless me, protector of women and the bound. You knew your path, though yourself a slave, made them set you free. Set me free. Inquired of the mute child, what do you want? Though others cried, impossible, did not stir until she found and made her choice. Let me know the truth of my own thoughts, the liberty to follow them where I must. Bless, preserve, enlighten me. Long against danger, give me aid. Okay, now we can do some questions, and then I just need like 2 minutes at the end. So.
Can I just tell you, I'm loving this so much to learn all this history.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I want to save it so we have the history of these. I mean, I know we're recording it, but I'm just so glad we have it and we have you telling it. And I don't know, I just wanted to pop in and tell you how appreciative I am of you being here today and helping us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Did any of our hosts pick up questions? Izzy Beans, you got a question, I think?
Somebody was asking about the group I visited in Australia. It was churches. I saw schools and churches. It wasn't a particular group that I hung out with. I hung out with my sister. No questions?
We've been a little go, go, go all day. Cut our breaks down. I think I've talked 5 or 10 minutes during each break. So if you are kind of done and you want to do your 2-minute wrap up and then just give us another little bit of a break.
Okay, sure.
I don't think anyone here will argue with that.
All right.
Oh, wait, Ari and Ryan have a question.
Oh, okay. What is it?
And Leah has a question as well. Leah asks, is it still a priority for Daughters of Flame be women only? Do you see that changing in the future?
I think we'll stay with that. Yeah, because for one thing, I think a lot of women have joined it because it's women only, right? So it would be weird to shift that on them. And there are so many places now where men can be flame tenders. But I've also always said that if any men wanted any help setting up a group, I'd be more than happy to do that.
We have a question about Brigid and bees. Oh, why is my chat moving on me? Hold on. Oh, for crying out loud. Can the bee question be reposted? I saw it and I can't find it again. Oh, one thing I've been wondering, where did the association with bees come from?
That's not leaping immediately to my head. I know I've come across it before. It's not a big one for me, but it was for that artist. Yeah, I can't remember. I've lost track of it. But I have checked it out. It is in there somewhere. I'll find it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Oh, Mael, you need to do your 2-minute closing, right?
I do.
All right.
So it's another song, and I'll put the words up for you, and we'll sing it twice again, and then I just have a very short blessing at the end. So now I share. I'll get better at this. Share. Here we go. From current slide. There we go. I thank you for the river that flows far from sunlight, for the hidden opening of that stream, for the sacred grove that rises from those waters, for the sacred wisdom pouring from those leaves. I thank you for the river that flows far from sunlight, for the hidden opening of that stream, for the sacred grove that rises from those waters, for the sacred wisdom pouring from those leaves. May your smoke hole be blackened, your house post straight, your cattle strong-legged and sure. May Brigid's flame illuminate your path, bringing warmth and inspiration to you and those around you. Thanks to Brigid for her gifts.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome.